time has come. Time to review Blinx 2 Masters of Time and Space, and maybe this time it'll be better than the first.
Blinx can be seen as an attempt to try and make a mascot for the Xbox. Master Chief really wasn't a kid-friendly image with all the alien killing and all that, but nowadays, I don't think anyone cares about stuff like that. The first Blinx was an extremely underwhelming game. It was such a bare-bones platform game with shooting elements that had no chance against its competition, Ratchet & Clank on the PS2. I've stated in my Blinx revisit that both Blinx and Ratchet & Clank came out around the same time, and both games were very similar in their style of play. While Blinx was given mediocre to negative scores, it garnered a small fan following. It did sell well enough to warrant a sequel to be made, and this game was the final nail in Blinx's coffin. However, it could have saved the series if it didn't do one foolish thing.
Yeah, this game is marginally better than the first. If only I could rewind time and show the developers that this is how the first Blinx should have been.
There isn't anything I could find on the development history other than the issues of difficulty and slow-moving characters have been addressed. Blinx 2 sold terribly, only selling about a quarter of what the first sold. This game is proof that a not-so-good first game can jeopardize a newly formed series. If you saw my first review of the game and the revisit, I commented that the game lacked presentation and was very basic to the point where it was unacceptable for the 6th generation, as at that time games were becoming more than just games, and new intellectual properties are supposed to wow us, making us want to play them and push system sales. Because the first was so underwhelming, I don't think that anyone knew or cared that a sequel came out, except for the small few that loved the first one. So that was the end of the series.
It's sad, really. Blinx has so much potential for a game series. Warping time and how it applies to platforming, it's really a good concept, and I would actually like to see Blinx make a comeback.
The graphics are good for the Xbox, although at 1080p, they look terrible as you can see every individual pixel of the textures. But that is what happens when you play it on a 360 through an HDMI cable and on an HD TV. The game is better emulated on the 360 than the first, as the frame rate is consistent all throughout the game, but it does occasionally pause for a brief moment every once in a while. The music is better in this game. I wasn't really a fan of the score in the first, but I think it's done better here as I enjoyed the music. And there's English voice acting this time. The previous had either only Japanese voice acting or it might have been some sort of gibberish, I don't know. The voices are good voices for the characters, but the acting itself is really bad, but in a very funny, cheesy kind of way. It sounds like they directly translated the Japanese script and read it verbatim.
The voices are very familiar. I want to say that it's the 4Kids voice actors, and given the time frame this game came out, and the fact that those voice actors weren't that good back then, it's not too far out of left field to think that.
The controls are a major improvement over the first. It's a lot more natural, and they included a lock-on. The first game desperately needed this as you could only shoot directly in front of you, but now you can hold a trigger to lock on and fire. And the time monsters actually look like monsters and not these cartoon blob things. They also respawn, so you don't have to worry about running out of time crystals, which was a major problem in the first. In the first, you could find time crystals or defeat monsters to get them. If you matched 3 of the same crystal, you would get a time control. But if you matched only 2 or none, then you got nothing. So you were SOL if you ran out of time crystals or controls because nothing respawned. But this time when you collect a crystal, they appear under their respective control. You still have to collect 3, but you don't need to match them. And while you're limited as to how many controls you can carry, you don't have to worry about one time control overriding another, in case you run out of space to hold time controls.
I can't help but wonder, why wasn't the first game like this?
This time around, you're not just tasked with defeating monsters. You're given objectives to complete so you can progress through the levels. You can complete one of 2 objectives to progress, which gives the levels more depth. And I like the idea of having different objectives to complete. It gives you a plan A and plan B type of choice. While games nowadays give you that A or B choice, it affects the story. But sometimes it's nice to see something more simple where nothing changes depending on your choice, allowing you to have the same result by doing something different. You can also sweep trash while moving, allowing you to avoid near collisions as it sweeps trash pretty quickly too, even with the most basic of sweepers. You're also given a melee attack, one of the things I said the first game so sorely needed. Additionally, you finally have a health bar and retries act as lives instead of being both hit points and lives. They added in checkpoints and they got rid of the 10-minute time limit, which I can only say, good riddance.
Again, why wasn't the first game like this?
But there is one thing that this game did wrong, and that's playing as the TomTom gang members. Well, I don't want to say that it's wrong, but their implementation of it feels wrong. Instead of choosing to play as either the Time Sweepers or the TomToms, The game alternates between the two, so you'll do a level as a time sweeper, then you'll do one as a TomTom, then back to the sweepers. The TomToms rely on stealth tactics and gadgets for their style of play. You find things in crates and use them to distract sweepers or trap them using space manipulation like black holes and things like that. You also get more traditional weapons and ammo. I really don't like playing as the TomToms, mostly because their story narrative switches between the two and their leader is one of the most annoying game characters ever made.
With the way the game is set up, it feels more like a spin-off than an actual sequel.
While the title has Blinx's name in it, you don't actually play as him, and that's usually something I don't care for, especially for a game that's supposed to be a direct sequel. I want to play as the title character. That's why I bought the game. Am I right? You don't buy a Metroid game and expect to play as a space pirate, do you? No, you want to play as Samus. But you can get away with that in a series that's not connected like Final Fantasy or with spin-offs, but that's just me. I don't mind when spin-offs do this, but not when a main series of games do, because I believe that you shouldn't give the spotlight to other characters in a main series game, because to me, that's a bait and switch. If it didn't have the number 2 in the title, I would have taken it as a spin-off. But I will say that the character creation is extremely detailed. You can pretty much color and resize every detail of your character to make them exactly to your liking. Surprisingly, the only thing you can't change is your character's gender. For such a detailed character creation system, which is almost on par with the Elder Scrolls series, I'm surprised that female characters aren't included.
I assume that female gamers would want to play as female characters, and probably some of you guys out there would too.
The story focuses more on the TomTom gang than it does the Time Sweepers, which again is good for a spin-off series, but not a main series title. I don't like the TomToms. I find them to be really annoying and stupid characters for the most part. They're on par with those Saturday morning cartoon villains that are really incompetent and are defeated by their own stupidity rather than the hero. I just do not like them at all, and I do not like playing as them. I feel that the story switching and spin-off feel of the game are holding it back. If you played only as Blinx in a brand new adventure, it would feel more like a direct sequel rather than a spin-off. Then this game would have been perfect and we might have seen more Blinx games. But overall, the game is a major improvement over the first in terms of gameplay and difficulty. The game is not easier because they made it easier, but because of the improvements to the controls and gameplay. And the removal of the 10-minute time limit helps too. I would have just liked to play as the Time Sweepers as I had more fun with their combat and platforming segments. Because with the Time Sweepers, I felt like I was on an epic adventure and was actually doing something besides fighting monsters.
Blinx 2, for a sequel that's more of a spin-off, is good and is what the first game should have been like, and I would like to see the Blinx series rebooted and play like this one.